there is so much history between me and this person. And I have a double strong cup of coffee because I'm going to need it to keep up with this person because he has the most energy of anyone I have ever met in my life. So, hello, Mr. Victor Capecce.
Well,
Welcome to Epac Quarantine Chats.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
We go back. There's so much to talk about.
Oh.
We go back so far. Could you believe it?
And some things we could talk about, but we can't share it or record it.
Yeah, I know, really. We've known how many years have we known each other at this point? Do you know?
I do know they had indoor plumbing, and it was, I want to say 83, 84, because we moved here in 86. So I would say maybe 82, 83, yeah. Somewhere in there.
It had to be 83, 84, really.
Somewhere in there.
Geez. And, you know, I think of the 80s and 90s like yesterday, and then I talk to people who weren't even born until like 93. And I'm like, oh, I guess that was a long time ago. Anyway, presently, you are working at Millersville. Tell us about your job, and then we're going to work backwards.
Oh, okay. The job now?
Yeah.
Well, all right. So the job now is I'm a associate professor, as was George, an associate professor, and in the communication theater department, I was brought in as technical director as well, and teach mostly theater courses, mostly technical theater courses, but also public speaking and entrepreneurship and a full range of theater courses. That's what I'm doing now. And now, the now is, it seems like just yesterday, but the now has been 15 years.
I know. Oh, wow, really?
Yeah. TikTok, yeah.
You have been in this business we call show for a long time.
Oh, yes.
Primarily as a set designer. Am I right in that?
Well, primarily as a set designer, but I did costumes as well. But that's not that wasn't my first foray into the entertainment industry.
Okay, well we're gonna get, but we're
working backwards.
We actually shared stage at one point. After all these years.
Well, oh yes,
right?
Yeah. Yes, and after we shared the stage, yeah.
Yes.
In my choice role that I had done twice. That was the second time. I want to do it one more time before I die. I got one more in me. And we actually, we shared the stage actually on stage.
We never appeared in the same scenes.
But we've done a bunch of shows together too.
Right.
But Cabaret was one of the, absolutely phenomenal experience.
Your humble beginnings, how you got into this business and all that. We'll start.
All right. So actually, a couple of us, when I was in graduate school, we were talking about how we got started in it. And what happened was I was a little kid watching this black and white TV, and Mary Martin flew into the nursery in Peter Pan, and I said, I got to do that. And since I really couldn't fly, I decided I wanted to go into the entertainment industry, and I started out with puppets and magic, and I was going to be a magician. That was my thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I got started. And I was going to be an actor. And then I was working summer stock, and I never left the shop. I never got on stage, and I never left the shop since then.
Now, summer stock after or before grad school?
It was both. It was before. I worked summer stock a lot, but I was a kid in high school in Clinton, New Jersey, in a theater that unfortunately just burnt down about 3 or 4 years ago. And a bunch of us who worked there afterwards, after my first year there, we really have bonded, and we have this sort of club. It's like summer camp. It was. It's really quite wonderful. But yeah, I was going to be an actor, singer, dancer, magician, and went on to design. And when I was in college, because I
Now,
could draw.
that summer stock that you were baptized in,
Yeah.
that sort of rigorous experience does not exist anymore. Is that correct?
Oh, you're right. You're right. And gosh, it was, which is why we bonded, those of us who worked it. First of all, it was, and the first season was one show every 2 weeks, but it was only two of us in the shop, and they would rehearse for 10 days and do a show. When my colleagues and I operated summer stock in Clinton, the same theater, a couple of years later, we did 10 shows in 10 weeks. And I'm not talking about little shows. I'm talking, we opened with Cabaret. That was the first time I'd done it, both designing it, costuming it, and playing the MC. Oh God, oh youth. But then, with things like Hello Dolly, The Apple Tree, and See How They Run, comedies, and Diary of Anne Frank. I mean, show after show after show, 10 shows in 10 weeks. So first of all, you get the practice of thinking very quickly. The analysis of the performance and the analysis of the technical aspects happen extremely quickly, and you're just tuned into it, and you memorize an act a night.
Right.
You block act one on Monday night you memorize it, block act two on Tuesday, Wednesday you start running it, and you're going to open in 3 days. So you've got to know your stuff. So
Right.
that kind of regimen isn't done anymore. And from an actor's standpoint, the fact is that the voice was already there, the regimen was already there, and the total focus to accomplish it in an extraordinary short amount of time. And I went back to look at the reviews. Not that those are sacred or memory might embellish, but truthfully, and I'm looking back at the photographs as well, which I still have, and it was good. We did a good product in a short amount of time. And again, we were pros. It was like live television, weekly television, which was not that far in the past from the time we were doing it.
But we're both old enough to see the death of summer stock. We grew up with summer stock as a fundamental thing, in the New York Times. Remember the New York Times? And Epac used to be included in it.
Yes.
It was really there was pages of summer stock. They'd all advertise their summer stock. That's all a thing of the past. It doesn't exist. There were theaters that specialized in summer stock, and that doesn't happen anymore.
Well, the first time I heard about Epac or read about it was a book, and I have the cover of it, a photograph of it, called Straw Hat. And it was the listing of the summer theaters that you could apply for either as an actor or as an apprentice. Wow, we could work all summer long as an apprentice and only pay $50 a week to be an apprentice, or things like that. And so it was the After Star Legion Playhouse that was listed years ago, and there it was.
Yeah, I think our historian Alan Gomberg just Colleen Dewhurst it's in her book too, which something happened. She used to show it at Epac, Legion Star Playhouse at the time, and then was called to Broadway. I mean, it was a whole interesting story, but a lot of people traipse those boards in summer stock. Anyway, moving forward, then you go to grad school, which is very interesting. So I want you to tell us about your grad school and your class in grad school.
Well, first of all, in college, after I decided I didn't want to learn all those lines to be an actor, I might as well be a designer. My design teacher, his name is Don Creason, and he was new. He's from the South, and he said, and he looked at my work and the fact that I had designed so many shows in college, all student productions. By the way, we had a student production every week. It would rehearse for 2 weeks. Every Friday at 4:00, there was a student full production, and I designed 16 shows in one semester. I mean, I have photographs. I mean, these were full shows. And he said, Victor, he says, you need to go to graduate school. I think you need to go to Yale. It was 2 syllables. And so I said, okay. And I applied. and I called in for an interview. And they said, well, why do you want to come to Yale? And I said, well, it's a nice place to have been from. So they said, hey, great, you're in. And there was a class of 4 in my class. It was the smallest class before since. And at the time, it was Zach Brown, who has a major career in opera, Atkin Pace, who was Robin Wagner's assistant for years, and William Ivy Long, who you might recognize the name. He was big with the Tonys. He also designed little things like the costumes for Hairspray. When graduation, we had a little theater luncheon after graduation. My mom sat she sat right next to Meryl Streep. And I said, Mom, you had lunch with Meryl Streep and Sigourney Weaver, and in that class too was Chris Durang.
Was Chris Durang in the class too?
Yeah. He in fact, we all worked in the costume shop together. It's like he's a really fabulous writer. He does not sew well, but that's okay. We managed. So it was a very prestigious class as went on to great accolades, and throughout all the departments through the years did very well. Well, I had gone, Ithaca College was my undergraduate school where we learned. And so I went right from, worked another season of summer stock in between and designing costumes, which was a luxurious show every 2 weeks. The boyfriend, boys from Syracuse. Okay. So, and then went immediately to New York. By that time, I was already a member of the union. I was at the time, I believe, the youngest member in that year as a scenic designer. So I was able to start working in New York, and eventually moved into the city in an apartment building that you know well.
Yes.
In an apartment it was $160 a month.
Oh my
God! Floor, and 160 a month. It was a 3-room apartment at $160 a month, and I said, well, gee, I don't know if I can. No, I did. And in fact, it was William Ivy Long who found the apartment. He knew I was looking. He's the one who found it for me because he knew some people, and that's how you got into apartments in those days. So, and I lived there for in that building for 10 years. When I first moved in, which was before you and Alan moved into the neighborhood, it was, quotes, Hell's Kitchen. It was 49th Street and 8th Avenue, and everyone said 49th and 8th. Oh, ooh, you're going to move there? And then by the time I left 10 years later, they said, oh, 49th and 8th, is there an apartment in your building?
Yeah.
And because suddenly it became, and now it's like, don't even go there.
Yeah, no.
But I lived there, loved it. I worked a lot. And for the most part, had an absolute blast doing it.
Tell us about your stint on Saturday Night Live.
Well, because I was a scenic artist, in addition to designer, it's two branches of the same union. It started out, they needed a scenic artist, and it's like a Teamsters. You go to the hall and you sit on the bench, proverbially, metaphorically sit on the bench, and they might call you when they need you, but they can also skip down the line, and if they like you, they'll call you if you're on the list. So that happened regularly, and I worked for NBC for a couple of years. Whenever I wasn't designing out of town in Manhattan, I would work for NBC. So it was really great. 49th and 8th, it was like the short a short walk to 30 Rock. And it was a great time. It was an absolute great time. Made buckets of money. It was a great time. Great people to work with, and you're there when they're rehearsing. You're there for the dress rehearsal, and the band is rehearsing. The adrenaline is going. It was a blast. Gilda Radner, Jane Curtin, Lorraine Newman, Bill Murray. They were Garrett Morris. That was the group. we would be dismissed at 11:15. I'd run home just enough to turn it on. And once it starts, it's like a roller coaster that, it gets to the crest. And once you let that roller coaster go, it's on a roll. You can't stop it. And so that was a very exciting thing to do.
And don't forget, this was New York in the 80s. Was it the 80s already, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
early 80s, late 70s,
Early 80s.
80s.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
party time, party city.
oh my God. I often say, first of all, we were around the corner from Studio 54,
I know.
and around the corner to Restaurant Row, Don't Tell Mama. I loved it because I'd walk in and by the time I got to my stool, my Southern Comfort Old Fashioned bottle of fruit was on the bar waiting for me. And who would go out until after midnight because I still have 4 or 5 hours,
I think that was like the biggest culture shock when I moved down here, because you didn't leave your apartment until 11 o'clock on a weekend party, because you were out till 5. The bars closed at 4, maybe after hours.
Yeah.
And when we had last call at 2 o'clock, if you go out, at New York time, you have time for one drink, and then it's like lights, fluorescents on, and you're like, no.
Well, okay, but you talk about energy. Here's the thing. I mean, we were working. I would be up early in the morning. I'd go out, have a couple of drinks. I'd leave the house at midnight. You're right. You wouldn't even, is this 11 o'clock news over? Okay, time to shower. And so, it's like, I'll go out early. I'll go out at midnight tonight because it's Tuesday. So you go out and the next morning you're up at 6.
So I just want to talk about the history a little of the arts in New York and soap operas, because it's really important. At one time, they were like at New York, they were all filmed in New York, except for General Hospital was in LA, and that was it. But they were all filmed in New York, and there was something like 70 soap operas. I mean, each station, to NBC, CBS, and ABC, would have half-hour soap operas starting at like 11 a.m. till 4:30.
Right.
Constantly.
Right.
Constantly.
And there were 3 of them out in Avenue M.
Yeah. As the World Turns, Another World, and
Texas.
Yeah, Texas.
Texas.
So the studios in Brooklyn, those soap operas kept designers, set dressers, actors on Broadway. That was their job as they were doing Broadway shows. People forget that kept so many actors in New York employed. The death of the soap opera affected the theatrical life of the city in so many ways.
Well, and in a way, there's a parallel to summer stock, because the actors would get the script maybe the day before, but don't forget they did not email the scripts in those days, and they didn't even fax them in those days. And so they might have gotten the script, but they would be there in the morning in hair and makeup at 6:30, 7 o'clock, and going through the lines and doing the camera moves, planning the camera, bing, bang, boom, shoot it out the door. So by a lot of times certainly by 2, 3 o'clock, most of them were done. Many of them were done by noon, and there were a lot of them, and they did work a lot. And there were an army of crew, stagehands, all the IA crew, the cameramen, and the designers, and the set dressers, and we scenic artists, and it was a mainstay.
But it's funny, because if you want, the only soap opera that is readily available to watch from that period, and it's actually later, is Dark Shadows. You can watch the whole thing from the end, and everybody on Broadway appears on. I think the entire cast of 76 appears in Dark Shadows at one time or another. They'd go to the soap opera, because once you did the rehearsal and everything, at that time it was 30 minutes, 20 with commercials. Each episode was 20 minutes.
Right.
Which you forget, it's 20 minutes of work with the, take away the credits, take away the commercials.
Right.
You maybe a little over 20 minutes of airtime. So you film 20 minutes a day, and then you're gone, and you have dinner, cocktail, and you're off to 1776.
Right. Up in there. Now, well, now, in all fairness, too, though, they did. I mean, the soaps that I worked on, they didn't even use cue cards. It looked like a piano roll. That it was mechanized. The script was printed, and they had two matching ones that were synchronized. It was not electronic. It was mechanical because digital monitors did not exist. And if they did, they would have been the size of a TV that you couldn't hold it up like this. So they, the old TV. Anyway, and they would have this scrolling script, and of course the actor pretends that they're looking at the acting partner. They're not. They're looking over the shoulder, each other's shoulders, and reading the script, which of course they're familiar with.
Right.
And we would be forced to sit there in the soap opera studios, waiting if something they needed to touch up. And it used to be freezing cold, no place to sit because all the furniture is roped off to protect it. And I'm sitting there listening to the dialogue, biting my thumb and fingers to keep from laughing. I said, I can't believe this dialogue. Who made that? What are they saying? And it was just hysterical. But okay, so that's you see the scar on my thumb? That's where it came from.
You're doing soap operas and you're riding high. You have a apartment and you're paying $300 for an apartment. Why move? Why leave all that?
Okay, well now, all right. So that's an interesting story because that was the whole debacle. They were going to. It sounds trivial, but to me it wasn't. They were going to change the windows and make them so they couldn't open. I would not have been able to use my air conditioner, and they were ugly. And frankly, you were going
to change your windows so you couldn't open your windows?
In other words, it was going to open a little tiny bit. They were modern windows and would only open one little slat on one side. The building still has those windows. I promise you, it's still there. And the rest of it was going to be stationary. You couldn't move it. And on top of that, I had spent a lot of money custom making my own drapery, and this was not in my. This was also besides the look of it and the air reduction it was going to cause. It offended my design sense. So I also found out that the reason they were doing it was because it has to do with the rent stabilization, because they could take all of the replacements that they'd done through the building, the new furnace, the new roof, the new windows, and charge them, because of the rent stabilization laws, up the rent by accounting for all those expenses.
Right.
So it was not to their benefit to repair anything because they couldn't pass it along. They could only pass along replacement. When I found that out, that compounded it, and I realized that this was what was going on, and ultimately we're all the beneficiary of it. They took me to court for not letting them replace the windows, and they.
I didn't know they took you to court.
Okay. I
didn't know that part of the story.
Yeah. Okay, so it's the first time you're hearing it. Okay, well, they paid me handsomely to leave. They paid me enough to leave to come and make a down payment on a house on College Avenue in Lancaster.
Mm-hmm. Now, let me ask you this. Besides all this apartment stuff, it was a very difficult time that we were entering, and we were both there.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we both left at the same time, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
But living in New York, the glamour was gone. Basically, AIDS was rampant. You were losing friends a week. It was like living in a plague town. And so the whole atmosphere of New York changed.
Yes, it did.
And did that have anything to do with compounded with the apartment and them paying you? Did that have anything to do with your ultimate choice? Just like New York, living in New York, and how New York had changed, and emotionally what it took to live in New York at that time?
Yeah, yes, it did. Yes, it did. And uh, you know, as I may have alluded to, when we got there in the late 70s, early by 81 it started, but let's say late 70s into early 80s, it was frankly an era and a place of unbridled hedonism, the likes of which probably history had never seen before nor since. And that wasn't the appeal, but there was this,
I don't know what you're talking about, but I'll take your word for it.
Okay, all right. I can't. Well, anyway, but I can't go into detail because I still value my job. But anyway, so but it was, and then all of a sudden there was a damper on it. I do remember, going through some traumas in my apartment building, and then going to work where I think it was going to be okay. I don't have to worry about that, and then reading the daily news and all the news and all the things going on and people talking.
It was incredibly dirty.
Yeah, it was, and suddenly, the whole Times Square area when we moved in was rather seedy.
Oh, very seedy.
It was seedy, but kind of a honky tonk seedy. But suddenly, literally over those short periods of time, that era, that suddenly that seediness, which was kind of a funky honky tonk, became more sinister.
Yeah.
And there we were in the midst of it, and our neighborhood was not at the time a glamorous neighborhood.
No.
And we had our own little niche in our apartments, and the little bodega around the corner, and we could walk to the park and take a subway downtown, whatever. But
do you remember the place that you could get chicken, rice, and beans for like $2, and all the hookers would eat there?
Oh my God, yes!
I'd go in and get like half a chicken, a roasted half chicken, rice and beans for like $3.95 or $3, and then every hooker on the Upper West Side was there waiting for eating dinner there.
Hang up. It was not glamorous.
Fish sandwiches with hot
sauce. Well, my ugly story about that was I happened to be walking by, and there was a guy there who had dumped a whole bunch of chicken bones to his dog, which I wouldn't do that. Yeah. And the dog, I happened to walk too close, just dodging pedestrian traffic, and the dog took a nip at me. Oh, all right. So it was there went my afternoon with the police and everything, and the dog and the guy saying, "Oh, my dog doesn't have rabies." Well, he bit me. So that was it was the same chicken place. It was like, people just tossed their bones. It was like, this was not haute cuisine.
Open till like 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
It's very colorful. You decide to move. They're going to pay you handsomely for your apartment.
Right.
You've had this career. Why Lancaster, PA?
Oh, that was very easy. I was going through expressing my discomfort, my frustrations, in the living, including the apartment and the ambiance. The fact that I also, by the way, the other aspect was that Broadway was beginning to diminish in terms of its activity. So that meant that it was the beginning of the Phantom was opening, and all the big, super expensive shows, fewer plays, so there wasn't as much Broadway creativity going on as well. And my family said, well, why don't you move to Lancaster? My sister lives on the other side of Lancaster. And that was the incentive. The idea was, once you leave New York and get through the tunnel, you can go anywhere. You're now liberated from New York City. And I moved to Lancaster thinking that I would be here maybe for a year, 2 years, because I didn't know anything about it. The only way I even knew where to go into the house I was moving into, I had to find the moving van. And I said, oh, there it is. So, and I did. And ultimately, because my sister, the family, and I stayed. I never I never left.
Basically, it was you had family here, right? You
Yes.
had family. You were migrating closer to be with your family.
Yes.
So you chose. Now, I know there was Albright College and Lynn Morrow, who is a figure
Oh, yeah.
that looms large in a lot of our lives. As
Oh, yes.
did she have anything to do with it? Because I know you weren't you working for her at Albright College before?
Oh, great story. Yes. What happened was, and I'd never heard of Albright College. I had worked several times with a designer, Ray Recht, very talented designer, he and scenic artist, and he had been designing the productions at Albright College. And he came up to one of the gigs, and it was a gig, it's a contract. And he said, I can't do the next show. Victor, I recommended you. So I said, what the heck? All right, I was free. It was in the spring. It was something like around this time of the year, around April. And so I took the gig, and then Lynn Morrow shows up in my apartment to talk about, oh, darling, she says, to talk about that we did a musical, the musical Merrily We Roll Along.
Yeah.
That was what she was directing, and a really phenomenal singer and now professor, now a great mentor to many students. Jeff Lentz was a student and starred in it, and so it was a great time, and it was very successful. I loved it, and so I had that gig at Albright. So it's now December the following year, and I'm now weeping because I'm about to leave New York City, and you saw me do it because you saw me weeping the night we saw Follies in concert. Same weeping.
Yes.
Around that same time, and I'm saying, okay, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. My phone rings, and it's Dr. Lynn Morrow from Albright College. So, oh, darling, how would you like to design all my shows next year? Well, this was a sign from heaven, because I just decided that hours before I was going to leave Manhattan, and now I get a phone call saying I'm now to work in Reading. And so I'm tears are coming down. I said, Lynn, I can't believe you're asking me this, because I'm going to be closer to Reading now. I'm moving to Lancaster. And I worked with Albright College for many years after that, show after show, and taught there. It was not a full-time income by any stretch of the imagination, but there was an anchor, something that I could identify with, and it made a huge difference in confidence with the move. So I did that, and again went on for many years after that with Lynn. And because of that, I had the background to, I'm now taught some classes and worked at Albright. Now there's an opening at Harrisburg Area Community College. I now have a bit of a track record in teaching. So I'm teaching at HAC. I taught Intro to Theater for 17 semesters, 1 day a week. And then Pennsylvania School of Art and Design. Oh, we need somebody to teach what we call planned surfaces, or special surfaces. Don't finishes. It's movie painting, guys. So that phone call from the recommendation from Ray to design Merrily Roll Along led me to the alignment of my moving to Lancaster with Albright College, which then led me to the back door. There was no search. There was no, it was a handshake deal. Hey, Victor, you want to teach this next semester? Fine, yeah, got it. Okay. And to build up a track record to get me where I am today, teaching at a university.
It's all good because Lynn, because you got me out here.
Yes.
So I don't know if you want to go through that story, although I've told a lot of people about it.
Okay.
Because
yeah.
You were with Alan at the time.
Yes.
Who was my roommate and best friend, one of my best friends from college.
Right.
You asked him to move with you.
Yep.
He didn't really want to.
Right.
I had it with the, I was working at the River Hotel. They closed the River Hotel to become the AIDS hospice. I was on unemployment. And I said, look, let's get out of the city. Again, let's go, let's get, and you said there's this little theater called Effort of Epac, Effort of Performing Arts Center, because Carl Seipel, who had worked at Albright,
Right. Right.
was a connection there, who
Right.
later also worked at Epac during the summer as a managing director. He said,
Right.
why don't you come out, you could work at Epac. And I said, well, Alan, let's get out of the city. We had never been to the city. I mean, me and Alan were like, you know, the joke about, you know, our summer vacation going to the country was Central Park, you know, and never been out of the city. And just didn't go out of the city. And so I said, it might be fun to get out of the city. So we went, and you had bought that house in 120, your first home. Let's go back to
Right.
that. 120 College Avenue.
Yeah.
Yeah, you put a down payment on it, but it was in terror. It had been like a
Oh.
Oh my God. I walked in there, I cried. Because I bought a house, help me fix it up, you'll get cheap rent.
Oh.
That was the deal. I walked in that house, I'm like, what did I do? My God, this is worse than anything in Hell's Kitchen.
But it had a backyard. Anyway, yeah.
And that backyard. And actually, I'd worked in the house, became beautiful. And the deal was I'd get cheap rent if I helped renovated my own room. And I did. I renovated an entire, people do not believe this.
Oh, well, they don't.
Floors.
I think I have photographs of it. I have photographic proof. I promise you, I have photographic proof.
I actually had that form. I did my floors. I did my painting. I picked the colors. It's actually turned out like a beautiful, like blue and white trim.
Yeah.
It really turned out to be like a beautiful room. And we came down as like a tribe. It was Alan,
Yes,
me, and my friends Elizabeth and Tim, who I'm talking to. I'm talking to Tim a lot. I've reconnected with them. And we all came down, and they finished the room next to me. We both lived on the third floor, and they finished the room. They had the bigger room on the front next to me, and they refinished their room. And so, yeah. So that was, but I remember that was very interesting. That was very interesting.
It was, and well, you know, at first Alan said, well, why would he asked why he would move to Lancaster where there's no theater, and well, you're right, the Effort of Performing Arts Center was already existing, and I said, but Alan, go where there is none and make some. So
we had done. Alan had produced a Midsummer Night's Dream down on something Street.
Right.
And so we had all been in that. So
right.
Yeah.
So
you designed that, didn't you? Didn't you design that production? Yeah.
Well, it was his concept, but I basically designed and built it. I still have the donkey head upstairs.
Yeah, I saw pictures of that production. It's really, really nice production.
I know. It was beautiful. The mirrors, the black, the tuxedos. Oh, it was beautiful production.
And but you worked until like you looked into the Millersville. You worked with everything. I mean, you were doing so much. You were Victor Creative Renovations. Did you have your own company?
Yes. Well, yeah. and here was the thing, and well, first of all, my brother-in-law, Steve Daniels, is an electrical contractor, so he knows a lot of interior designers and decorators and does a lot of renovations. Mm-hmm. So the idea at that time, faux finishes were really picking up speed and were really becoming more trendy and popular. And of course, it's all scenic painting and movie painting techniques. So I started a business doing specialty finishes, faux finishes, murals, faux marbre, faux bois, fake wood, and all kinds of things, silver leaf, gold leaf, and doing specialty painting, which are really stage and movie painting techniques, and sustained it for, I still designed periodically, but that was a good chunk of income. I had a lot of large, long-term jobs, all the way through. Actually, for 10 years, I was able to do that, and loved doing it. Still love doing it. but now I have a day job at a university, so I can do that. But yeah, it's like, okay, I'm here in Lancaster. What am I going to do? You got to do something. And when the idea of facing the fact that you've got to earn a living somehow is one of the greatest incentives to be an entrepreneur and launch it. So I went and I did as much research as I could in setting up books, and met an accountant who I'm still with after 30 years to establish things and go through the regulations and the insurances and all the things that you need to do for a business, and started on my own.
So, so you came down here, and I was down here, and then we did 2 shows at Epac, and Alan couldn't take it and left.
Right.
Sorry, Alan, if you're watching this, but he was like, "It's not for me. I got to get back home to New York," which I understood. But for the life of me, I don't know why I stayed. I could have gone back. We had the apartment. We were subletting the apartment and the neighborhood was coming up. It was a nice a railroad apartment, spacious. And for some reason, I stayed. And Victor, I have no reason why. I don't know. It made no sense, but I just did not want to leave. And I remember when Alan left, you weren't home, and you'd walk into the house and they had that staircase. I sat on the stairs and cried for like an hour. Because I said, what did I just do? I'm all alone. I don't know anybody here. It was hard, but for some reason, something said stay. And now.
So we're all living in Lancaster. And how did it start with?
It started because you had the in with Lynn, who again shadows over all of us.
Yeah.
And Lynn took a liking to me. And we did work we brought our production. We did a home-produced production of Short Song Trilogy. We did it at FM. She let us do it up there. We did she hired Alan to direct Measure for Measure with me in the studio.
Right.
So, and Lynn just took a liking to me. And then we did, after Measure for Measure, she'd come to Epac and see my directing, and she'd see me on stage. And then I did Irma Vep for her for the first time. And then she did the Albee and Access. She invited Edward Albee, who decided to come down to do, they were doing a festival at Edward Albee. And Bill Saunders did a show, I think Jeff did a show, and Lynn did Man Who Had Three Arms with me. She got the rights that we had to go to New York and visit Albee, which was, and he had to look me over and then give permission, because he had produced the play himself and it bombed, and he was very, cautious about that. And then so we did it. He came to the festival, we did it, and then Lynn decided she was going to take it to the first Fringe in Edinburgh. You came along, and we all shared that beautiful flat in Edinburgh.
Oh, it was wonderful.
Oh, I love that. Oh, that was wonderful. That flat was wonderful. It was huge. And it was like, you see movies about Europe and the apartment buildings with those staircases, the huge hall, and that was exactly what it was like. Edinburgh was beautiful. I walked through it. And then my first friend, we were there and we played that. And I think you were there as technical advisor. Am I right?
Oh, well, I hauled the drapery and the props and the sound, and the projector, right? I had to run the projector.
There a photo.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful photo of you and Brad Williams working in the, he was in it, and Saida was in it. And we opened at this big theater, church hall or something. I don't know. It was this huge theater. I was never so nervous in my life I was going to bomb it before. And I don't get stage fright. And then we were written up in the New York Times, and we won the first Fringe. That was an extraordinary time.
Well, all right. The fact is that, remember that play is not generally available to perform. So this was a personal permission from Mr. Albee. And as I understand it, and you might have told the story, when it won Fringe first, because all right, look, I also saw Bobby Drivers do the original Broadway production that Albee directed. So I promise you that the way you did it was so superior to Bobby Drivers that there was no question about it. It was a totally different play, totally different focus. The intent was much clearer. So, and I, like I said, I saw it at the Lyceum earlier. And Mr. Albee said, when he was asked, when Lynn asked him, can we take it to Edinburgh for the Fringe? He said, oh yeah, sure. Figure you'd never hear about it again. This little college troupe, this play, it'll just die in Edinburgh. So, all right. So then when it wins Fringe first, he gets a call from the New York Times.
I mean, we won and Stockton Channing won, yeah.
Pardon?
We won and Stockton Channing won that week too for Lady in the Clarinet. Yeah. And he was pissed. I think he was pissed.
He was pissed. Okay, so there's one more chapter of the story that you don't know about. Okay, so when the Pennsylvania Academy of Music opened in downtown Lancaster, which is now the Ware Center,
yes,
the folks there decided they needed a big event, a fundraising event, and so they offered Mr. Albee an award. And that's how you get stars to come. You offer them an award and pay them a fee to come and do that. So they did, and he talked and they gave him an award. So afterwards at the meet and greet, I walk up to Mr. Albee, who did not remember me. He did not remember all the things we did in Reading, dinner at Lynn's and cleaning up the stove and scrubbing all that stuff.
He didn't remember. I'll never forget. Lynn, God love her, wasn't a care about housekeeping. She really did. And so I remember Albee scrubbing her house, cleaning it. And he says, well, at least I got off the first layer of grime. I mean, like, all right,
absolutely.
He's cleaning my house. Isn't that
oh God, I miss her. But anyway, so I go up to Mr. Albee and I said, I said, I'm sure he couldn't possibly remember me from one casual evening, a decade and a half earlier. And I said, I just want to also mention, by the way, that The Man Who Had Three Arms is one of my favorite plays of yours. And he just snarled at me, said nothing else, and turned away.
Wow.
He wanted nothing to do with it. Wanted nothing to do with the show. I said, okay, all right. Did you not do Man Who Had Three Arms at Epac as well?
Yeah, we did. We did, as one of the things to do it publicly before we went to Edinburgh, we did it at Epac. We did it at Epac, yeah. Yeah. And yeah, and there was one part of the play where he's this critic who he hates, and he says the most vile things to her during the course of the show. She's supposedly out in the audience, and Jane Holland was there. Jane, forgive me. But anyway, so that was an experience. So and then Carl Seipel, was in Wayne Biddleson. They all worked at Epac, so
right.
We're all connected, and we're all connected. So, and then so I stayed, and this is what happened.
You've also done Pseudolus twice. I mean, the second show that Alan directed was A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, and. That was, back in those days, that was decades before the renovation, and
yeah.
With a 9-foot ceiling and with one toilet somewhere in there.
In the back. It's just a toilet, not even.
And I do remember, for instance, you talked about Cabaret. By the middle of the run, it was August. And by the middle of the run, I was in tails. And by the middle of the run, the lining in the tails had completely shredded and just dissolved with perspiration. And so it had to be replaced. There was no air conditioning. Oh my God, how did we endure it? By the time we were working there, it was an adventure. It was an adventurous challenge to create it and make something happen against these odds, making things work, and the audience embracing that adventure and participating in it and saying, we're going to go to Epac, and we know that the restrooms are outside and around the corner, it was that spirit of adventure that everybody bought into. It still is. The adventure has transitioned. It's an adventure, but it's a different kind now.
Yeah, yeah. No, it was. You were a courageous audience member if you came to Epac back in those days. You know it was going to be insufferably hot. But
Except for Follies, where Follies was insufferably cold.
Well, because we extended, as we're getting closer to renovations, we extended closing in August to open till the end of September. And so by the September show, October show, it was pretty cold. People would come with picnic. It was the opposite. You'd come with blankets, picnic blankets, and you cover yourself up during the show. Yeah. And Follies was the last show we did there, which you designed. You did, which was a great show, and it was the last show in that square. The next day after Follies, which for those of you who don't know, was about a theater being demolished, and they have one last big party on stage before they demolish it. And that was our last show with all these Len Bessiker and all these stars at the time, and Jerry Rothwell, and it was and then we did that show, and that was something special. And the next day we had closing night, and the next day the wrecking ball knocked down the old theater, which came down like nothing. It was like I think the wrecking ball touched it and it just fell apart.
Well, and the cranes and the fence and all that stuff. I might misremember, but I think the fence even went up before the show closed.
Yeah.
And
actually bulldozers outside during Follies.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not my misremembering.
The fence went up. They were getting ready for the construction. So as the audience was coming in to see Follies, about the theater that was being demolished, you had fencing, you had the yellow tape, the yellow thing, and you had literal bulldozers parked outside, ready to tear the place down. There we go. 1776. Is that the first show to open in the new theater?
Yes.
That's 1776, designed by you. The first show to open in the new space.
Right.
Tim Johnson, Gene Ellis, Dave Gillette, Kurt Simpson. Right. Oh, wow.
And, well, that was 1776. Follies is earlier.
Yeah, Follies was earlier.
Okay, but Follies.
Oh, I see Follies on the, yeah.
You know, here it is, the old theater.
You look how close this is. Guys, look how low that ceiling is. That's Dan Jarman, Lane Ziner, Cynthia Charles, Steve Supek, and Holland. Forget what his name is. Holland. He was young. Right. Yeah.
And
who's that woman number with Robin Payne?
Yep.
With the Mylar mirrors in the back.
Yep.
Candace O'Donnell, Susan Barber. Wow.
And there's Lane.
Lakeisha, Lane, God, why don't you see Love Me Blues? Should do that show again. Everybody says do Follies again. I'm saying I can't cast it anymore. Trish Corcoran.
Right.
I love that.
Lucy and Jesse.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, and you're right. Look at how low that ceiling is.
Her hands are on the lights with one lift. Look.
Well.
I'm surprised she isn't wearing gloves.
Well, here was Oklahoma. Now, remember, Oklahoma, I think
those sets were so small, Victor, in comparison to what they are today.
I know, wow. and you could actually stand in a chair and focus the lights. Well, all 9 of them, because that's all there were. And yeah, I mean, it was really, but
I love that production of Oklahoma, and I always tell you that opened. It was a great production. I got the greatest compliment from Susan Pena. Said it was Oklahoma, directed by John Ford. Being a movie buff, that was like the greatest thing. But they talk about Oklahoma being now it's dark. It was dark. We did it very dark back then, very Rich Repko and Dan Jarman, and 9/11 happened. 9/11, we opened, it got great reviews, 9/11 happened, and the audience didn't come. or very little. Andy Kindig, yep.
Well, and if you recall, I think it was the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Baby.
Yeah, the Philadelphia Inquirer had a list of the 10 top regional theater experiences, and this Oklahoma was listed in that within that 10, and that included the Walnut Street Theater and any number.
I didn't know about this. When was it? What was this?
It was right after that. It was right at it was right at the end of that summer. Just
And
before
what
the
paper
fall.
was this that said that?
I think the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Oh my Lord. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, 9/11 happened and remember, there was a delay in the process of renovating and a delay in doing Follies.
Yeah, we had to put Follies out for another year. The renovation was supposed to start. It didn't start, so we had to bump Follies to the next.
Yeah, but 1776 I thought it was a fabulous production with some great talents.
Wow.
There was a case where it was barely finished. I mean, we were moving in and, hey, we got a show to put on, but we managed to do that.
We were still getting accumulated to the space, and the show just like that set was like all of a sudden huge. Look at that. That's beautiful.
Well, and that came on for just that one scene.
One scene. He plays the violin scene. That came on for one scene.
Well, and then, I remember talking to you because I had done South Pacific at the Fulton, and you said, "Oh, well, actually, it was not going to be South Pacific, and we'll try to remember why." This is what I love. This is what I love about working with you. When I said, "Let's do real sand," I don't remember that you flinched at all. But it was that kind of audacity, that kind of adventurousness, and yeah, was it a pain in the neck? Did it?
When I did La Mancha, we had real dirt on the stage, and the cast would go out and they would roll in the dirt outside the playhouse in the park to get real dirt on them. And there's dirt on the floor of the stage. One night, it's hot summer, and I start smelling not pleasant smells, and they had mulched the outside of the playhouse.
You also did an incredible George in Virginia Woolf.
Yes. It's one of my favorite shows I've done. It really is. Love that set. That set was so good.
Well, it's just like the idea of using sand or going to the extreme of a convention using gilded cage. There were hundreds and hundreds of books on this set. It was everywhere. There were books on every shelf, overhead, all the way around, and bookshelves everywhere on the floor in stacks. And that was my conceit. I think when you do theater, you need to be a little bit arched, a little bit over. And I think that's part of the joy of it and what I like doing most about it. And so, I mean, this is an example of how many books there are. And fortunately, the late Fran Hill worked at the library, and the library was divesting of a lot of books. And so we were able to acquire this incredible collection of them from her.
Oh, I put my mom's picture on the shelf. I forgot about that. There's my mom's picture.
It's a wonderful play, and I loved how you made it essentially a comedy. It's a peculiar kind of comedy, and all right. So this is why Mr. Albee had such a hit with this. After that, where was he going to go? And I think that might have been one of his issues.
And it's one of those things that just is perfect. And it was very funny. That we made it very funny. I think people had forgotten. People didn't realize how funny the play was. That it's actually like a dark comedy. Very funny if you play the comedy of it.
Well, yeah, and I thought it was an absolutely wonderful production. And if you could, I guess if you could do The Man Who Three Arms, remembering or memorizing George was perhaps only second to that.
Yeah. Oh, Man Who Came to Dinner, Sheridan Whiteside. Woo!
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Right. And here, well, okay, yeah, that's...
You're really going, I see what's coming off.
Yeah. Well, but by the way, using the space and trying to make the space work, or, well, not trying, and succeeding in making that work.
That was really playing that on the thrust, the way you designed it. You really know how to design for a thrust. No matter where you were, it worked. I remember on that stage. No matter where you were, you knew that it worked. It was brilliantly designed for a thrust. With the books here and and just everybody got something, no matter where you were sitting, no matter where you went on that stage, you were seeing it. It was really, 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 really incredible.
Well,
great experience.
It's staging it. It's like, here's a window seat with the convention of, okay, yeah, a window, because what else will be there, but it gives an incentive to look. It gives an incentive to be outside. All those things are, again, that's playing with the convention to make that space work.
And, Jonathan Groff.
There was Honk. Another, this also back in the old days. Look at the lights. He's practically bumping the lights up there. Yeah, and what a wonderful musical.
Yeah, wonderful little musical. And we were the first to do it before it caught on. Everybody was doing it.
And an all-star cast too.
Look how young he is. Oh my God. Victor, do me a favor, send me some of those pictures. I'm going to send it to him.
Oh, absolutely. I could send you this whole...
Some of those. Yeah, send me the HONK pictures, because I don't think he's probably seen these in years. When are you going to come back and design for us again?
I know. Well, I might retire at any moment from my day job, and when I do, I'll have some free time.
Please, you've got to come. We'll have people climb ladders and I can't even. I'm home. I have no excuse not to deep clean my house. Okay, like I am getting up and down on my knees. I'm an old man.
Well, and I'd love to. I'd love to. And I've we've talked about that too. And I can't. I was listening to your talk with Jordan the other day, and every time as you were talking, I say, I forgot I did that show. Oklahoma was on. I forgot I did Oklahoma. I forgot I did Virginia Woolf.
Yeah, you did a lot. Right now, it's coming back to me because you haven't done. You've been in Millersville. You've been busy, and it's now looking at all that. You did a lot.
Well, and there's one show, and I was trying to find an old Epac program which had the list of it. There are two plays that I can't remember the titles of. One of them was with Ann Herr in the way back when, and another one was only partly that Carl Seipel directed, but I can't even remember what those plays are.
Round and Round the Garden?
Might be that, but there was one was Ann Herr was in it, and there was a swing. Oh, anyway, it's okay. I'll look it up.
Oh, Mornings at 7?
Mornings at 7. Yes.
Did you design Mornings at 7?
Yeah, with the swing, and that was where we had that was the first time we put a.
I wasn't here yet. I wasn't here yet.
Oh, well, that's why you don't remember.
That's when you were here before me.
Oh, that's when you don't remember. No, yeah. We had a fight.
I remember that production. But I didn't see that one.
Our discussion, our fight at the time was I wanted to put a step in one of the aisles, which now is like all the time. To come down, and it was, and I finally brought the fire marshal in, and he said, "Oh no, it's no problem." And that was at Mornings at 7 with a swing and 2 porches. Anyways, whatever. So okay, thank you. Now, okay, I can write that down. Now I can go.
Mornings at 7.
Mornings at 7.
Yeah, and there's hardly any there's no photos of the old days like before.
No. I have no photographs of the Mousetrap. I have no photographs of 10 Little Indians. I have no photographs of the first forum.
Which is a shame. There is a video.
but it's
But
like,
yeah.
yeah, it's like, but don't forget too, back in those earlier days it was a transition from summer stock. The show ran 2 weeks, it closed on Saturday, next show opened on Tuesday.
Yeah, it was so fast. It was ephemeral. It really was ephemeral. Like
Yeah,
nobody thought about photographing these things for
no,
historical.
no,
But it wasn't until much later that we got to take pictures. Now we have gorgeous pictures, but
right,
everything was ephemeral. It lasted for like 2 weeks and it was gone.
right.
Uh,
And, but that was, I mean, that was a challenge, and that was the excitement.
Now, today, you've been teaching 10 years. You sent a lot of great students your way to me, to Epac. You were beloved by so many people here and so many theater students. How are you dealing with this insanity? How are you dealing with this craziness?
Well, uh, well, first of all, it's scary. Those of us who are older, I'm an older man. We are categorized as the vulnerable. So we'll start with that. And I face that. I face that every day. I'm very cautious. I've made a whole bunch of masks. I wear them all the time when I walk out the door. So there's a level of fear, and in a way, it is very similar to the '80s in that respect. In a funny way, it might even be a little bit scarier.
It's scarier.
Because of that. That's number one, and number two is the fact that well, I mean, I'm dealing with it right now because I this is set up literally as my lecture space.
Right.
My one class, which is scenic painting, it's a struggle giving them assignments. They left campus for spring break, no supplies, no materials, went home. Now I have to come up with things that will engage them to do for scenic painting. Hello. There's that problem. That's frustration. My other courses are under control, except for I have a class for public speaking with 100 students in it. So I have 160 speeches to deal with in the next week and a half. This is not going to be. Okay. I'm working on it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a fear, and it's also it's a fear for one's own health, but also the anticipation of the indecision of nobody can decide perhaps where we're going next. Particularly, including with the university, nobody's saying they're treating things with registration like things are going to be back to normal come August.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm confident that it's not confidence is the wrong word, but I'm pretty sure that that's not going to happen. And if it were, being an older man who is medically vulnerable, just by my age and asthma, I'll be frank, that I don't want to be demanded. I don't want to do that. And also from the point of from the industry that we have shared so much with and love so much, the sense it's that gathering, it's that community, it's that when you've gathered that audience that by buying the ticket agrees to suspend disbelief, the old phrase, and when they see the gilded cage, they'll buy that. They'll accept what it is, and as a community they're together. And when there is a comic moment, they will join forces and laugh, which is why they have laugh tracks, to give the illusion of that community. And I am not sure how that spirit, that community is going to come back. It's going to be a new reality, a new world, and a new way of working with things. It may transition to an approach to what we've known and loved for all these decades, but it's not going to be a switch turned on and off, and come August or come July or August, and certainly not September, October. I think it's going to be a transition. It's going to be a learning curve. And so fortunately we have more technology than we did 5, 10, 20 minutes ago, for that matter. But we'll have to find a way to use that to re-engage, to reconnect with each other and with the audience with whom we want to communicate our ideas.
Right.
So I'm not sure what my next step is. I'm dealing with communicating with my students, creating PowerPoints and lectures and demonstrations in my little tiny studio here. And so right now I have the emergency needs, and frankly, because I'm going to repeat some of the courses, I'm preparing to continue this into the next semester. And my alternative was simply become a monk and retire. Deep down inside, being an introvert deep down inside, I can survive. Don't want to, but I can survive. But that's not. I don't think that's why I was put here on Earth. I think I was put here on Earth. I'm looking around. I mean, our stories alone, what you and I have engaged with, and how each of us has touched other people and communicated and connected these extraordinary, wildly diverse dots that are now connected.
And doing these interviews, that's one thing that has really been hammered home. It's something we don't think about because we go about our days, we get up, we go to work, we do work on the show. It's always about the next show. We don't have time to think through things. And doing these and talking to all these different people really made me hyper aware. It was a real good learning experience, and of how interconnected we really all are. I mean, especially in what we do here. One thing leads to another. Everybody has a connection here. It's true,
Well, and truthfully, and to a certain extent, I mean, it's very compact and very intensely connected within our immediate local community. But
right.
then we have tangential spokes, if you will, that mixed metaphor. We have spokes that go out, and we are connected to other people in interlocking circles in all kinds of ways. And my expression, I forgot where I stole it from. There are only 7 people in the business, and the rest is done with mirrors. So right now we all have an immediate reactions and needs and adjustments to make, whether it be our daily lives and shopping and reminding ourselves to be cautious and and how we expose ourselves and anyone else. So that fear, and you've agreed, is really even more than the 80s, because it's touching a lot more, and the economic impact on universally the economic impact.
80s was terrifying. It was sad. It was terrifying. It was frustrating because the government didn't do anything.
Right.
And that was the main reason that the AIDS epidemic, especially in the city, was so frustrating, because Reagan didn't even acknowledge it. Like, people weren't acknowledging that people were dying, and it was a whole psychological thing. But also there were precautions you could take.
Yes.
It wasn't easily transmitted.
Well, it wasn't easily transmitted, and actually, in terms of virus, and this is something, I don't want to get medical about it, but the difference is that the current virus does not, while it's horrible and people die, especially with who are vulnerable, but you can recover from it, because the virus itself does not attack the immune system, which will offer the potential recovery. With AIDS, that specifically is a virus that attacks the immune system, so there is no antivirus being manufactured by the body to combat it. So there's a huge difference right there. And but on the other hand, as I said, the transmission capability of the viruses.
And there was a stigmatism with the AIDS epidemic.
Right.
You were a lower person. You were a dirty
Right.
person. You were, you know, if you got it. And, you know, we remember those horrible pictures of the original victims and what they
Yes.
like.
Yeah.
It was really bad. This is different though. This is different. Scarier in some ways, but you know, because it's carried airborne, and that's what's so
Yes.
scary about it.
Yes. Yeah.
And you don't know how it's going to affect you. You don't know. I mean, you don't know how it's going to affect you. You know, live or die. Will I survive or not? You know, and people are dying. Like I've known everybody I know has to know somebody who's died.
Yes.
That's the thing is people are dying, but we don't want to get into that.
No.
Heavy.
No.
Yeah.
But from all right, from an out. Okay, here's where we are. We have this burning passion to create and to express and to connect. How are we going to do that? And I do think, I mean, last night I sat in on Michael Swanson's production at Elizabethtown College, which was streamed, and it was a good adventure to say, okay, here's something we can do to share, and it's a step. It's not the it's the first step. It's not the last step, but it's the kind of thing that we all need to look at, and how we're going to do things in the interim and build back up the community and the engagement.
But yes, but it can change. It can transmogrify. Just what we're doing now, it will be used now forever. Oh, is it like
Yes.
What we're doing now is something that's not going to go away.
Correct.
It's not going to go away.
Correct.
But theater is about communion between actors, audience. That you cannot replace on this format.
Yes.
It's not theater as we know it.
Right. Right.
If you're not in the same room, in communion, watching the same story, reacting to the same story, having the same experience, it's not theater.
It's not the same. No, it isn't. And again, it's that it's like the religious experience of buying into the conventions, buying into the comedy that takes the community to make that happen. And in fact, this is not an uncommon thought, that if you were to open up a comedy a comedy club, you're not going to have your table spread 9 feet away. You can't. Nobody's funny.
Nobody's gonna laugh.
No. You got to.
Talking about that. He says, you know, having like people 6 feet apart with masks and watching the comments. It's about every audience is an animal, and you know, an audience makes or breaks your show. Yes. The show is only, the experience is halfway there with the show. The audience is the other 50%. That's why the theater can be different night to night. Different experiences. One audience can say, I didn't like that show. One audience, the audience, I've seen it happen.
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
It's an animal who's going to determine how the show is going to go that night. How the show is going to hit emotionally that night is determined by the audience.
Absolutely.
And without that communion, it might be a lot of other things. It's not theater, you know.
Well, yeah, but even doing the streaming things that folks are doing with like what we're doing with Zoom, where you've got, it looks like the Brady Bunch, and and they are not relating to each other.
You know, right now we're just sit and wait, and I really hope that eventually, I'm not going to give a time on it because I don't know. Well, eventually we can get back to that experience again, that communal experience. I think we're going to need it more than ever.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
After this, I think we're going to need that community more, that communal experience more than ever. Just like the Greeks needed it, you know?
It's going to be missed. Just yesterday, I was on a webinar of a group of actually they're marketing people, and the director of Brooklyn Academy of Music was on, fundraising director. And what she talked about was exactly what you're talking about now, however, and what you're doing actually with this. And what she was saying, that in the interim, what we need to find is the avenues to keep people engaged.
Yes.
Keep people aware of the organizations. We have not vanished. we are continuing to engage with you. The Barnes Museum, for the first time, began their virtual tours and lessons and plans to keep their patrons, if you will, engaged, as another example. So exactly what you're doing now is what a lot of folks in the entertainment and arts industry, not entertainment alone, are hailing or identifying as something that we all must do. First of all, we have to and we can do this now. We have the technology and we have a bit more of the time to say how we're going to do it and plan it a little bit more and say, okay, this is entrepreneurial. How are we going to produce something? How are we going to engage our audience, whether they be art patrons or whether they be theater audience or dance audience, whatever it is? How do we engage them so they retain the sense of community with us?
That's the challenge. Well, I think, thank you so much. I knew this was going to be a blast. It was great. It's just great talking to you.
Oh, it is good talking to you.
Your face and talking to you. And we get
you.
People don't understand is we're so busy. Like we see each other opening nights or 10 minutes after curtain because everybody in the theater is so busy we can't socialize. We see each other's shows. Oh, it was wonderful. Kids, bye. And it's just because we're all so busy. We never get a chance to sit down and just talk. Especially like we're so always working on a show.
And you know what else, though? We're never bored.
That is true. Never. I'm going to work till I die. I can't even think about not working. I said my joke is like, I'm going to, you know what? It's going to be, I'll be working on a show. I'm going to call 10-minute break. And, oh, he's gone. Come back. Stage manager. So, all right, places. It's been 10. And, all right, he's gone. I just hope it's a good show.
and I'll be right there with you.
All right. We'll probably check it again. And thank you so much for spending time. Be good. Love you.
Thank you. Love you too.
Love you too. Thank you for everything. Thank you for bringing me here and fulfilling my destiny.
Oh. Bless you. Bless
All
you.
right, love.
I'll send you the pictures. Take care.
Send me those pictures. Okay.
Got it.
Thank you, babe.
Bye now.